You want to make new friends, but you don't know where to find them, and you don't know how to start building those deep relationships, especially in your 30s. It's okay to need to make new friends. It's okay to want to make new friends with people who can really resonate with what you're going through. I think we all need that. I think our support system needs to be well rounded in that way. Yes, you're still going to have people in your support system who have known you for over half your life or for your whole life. And you can have these newer friendships with people who completely understand where you're at in life. And so today is all about how can we make new friends? What is that process? What is it like? How do we start to establish relationships with people, particularly for me, like as somebody who is single and doesn't have any kids and is just like focused on living their life for themselves. I've been thinking a lot about, how do you make new friends? And over this past year, I think I've learned a lot on this topic, and I have some ideas and thoughts and reflections on how you can make friends as somebody who is single, doesn't have any kids, in their 30s, just living their best life. So let's get into it. I'm 31 now. As I've been in my 30s and have been making new friends, I think the process of getting to know people is a little bit different. I think in my 20s, I was approaching meeting new people all from like a very surface level perspective, in the sense that although they might have been sharing things about themselves, I wasn't sharing anything about myself. And so as I've been in my 30s, I've really tried to focus on like, okay, when I'm meeting new people and when I'm meeting potentially new friends and trying to figure out if I want to become friends with somebody, they're sharing things about themselves. And then what I've been trying to do is like take steps forward to share about myself. And I think that's been the biggest difference for me. And by me doing that, I think the depth of friendships has gotten much greater, which makes sense, right? Like if I'm approaching meeting new people and building friendships from a place of like, well, I won't share anything about myself, that friendship can only go so deep. Whereas if I'm approaching a friendship from the place of like, I'm going to share my soul with you, it can go a lot deeper. And if I really like push myself to think about like, okay, well, why in my 20s was I so focused on like surface level interactions? And I think it all just has to do with like this pressure to conform. Growing up, I was a part of like all sorts of different groups, like competitive cheerleading teams, competitive dance teams. And, I've talked about that before. But I was also in a sorority in college. And so in each stage of growing up, I was like jumping from group to group to group in like massive groups. And all of these groups were in a setting where you needed to all look the same, or there was like certain things that were identified in you that were exactly the same as everyone else. And so I think there was a lot of pressure to conform to those things that were identified by the group, and not as much space to be your authentic self. And so that's really, I think, what categorized like my 20s. And even in career, I think I was experiencing the same thing too, where it's like, okay, I'm working at this company and I feel like I need to act a certain way. I feel like I need to conform to, the environment around me and blend in, versus just being my authentic self, whether that's matching the people around me or not. Like, aspects of that might align with people around or people in the environment, but other aspects might not. And so, I think in my 20s, it was really difficult to step away from conforming to the group and stepping away from belonging and closer to authenticity. And so in my 30s, I think as I've gotten to know myself deeper, I've been able to, one, share that with other people, but also I've found that people approach me with deeper topics too. So yes, while in my 20s, people were coming to me with below surface level things, in my 30s, people are also doing that, but it's an even deeper layer of things that they're coming to me with. So, okay, well, what really needs to be true in order for us to make new friends? And how does that happen? I think there's so many of us just walking around in this world being like, oh my gosh, I want friends that feel so aligned. And, it's friends that align with whatever stage of your life you're in right now. And, I've been kind of hearing this from my friends who are new moms too. They're looking for friends who are also new moms, and that makes total sense. You need people in your life who are in the exact same chapter of life as you. And that's not to say that if you're in different chapters from another friend that you have to disconnect from them. I think you both can evolve together, and you can both honor the different chapters that you're in. And you also need friends in your life who are in the exact chapter that you're in, just to have a holistic support system around you to support you through whatever you need. Because for me, who's single, doesn't have any kids, I can't necessarily support at the same level to somebody who's married and a new mom. I can't support them at that same level as somebody else. I can certainly support them as human beings and in their experience and what they're going through, but I can't fully relate to it. And so I think there's a depth there that's really hard to get to, but that's okay, right? It's just a natural part of life. But, as we sort of move into different timelines from, existing friendships, or as everyone's sort of in a different chapter, I think our 30s is when those chapters get really pronounced, or it becomes really obvious that you aren't in the same chapter as another one of your friends. And so you need friends who align with the exact chapter that you're in as well. So, in the past year, I've just been reflecting on, okay, well, what has been so great about making new friends, and how has that process actually gone? I think I've figured it out. So going into this past year, in the first year of being 30, I think my goal was to make new friends, but it's getting comfortable with the journey of making new friends. So I was finding myself in several different scenarios where I'm putting myself out there. It was a dating experience of putting myself out there in conversations. It's when you're at a party and you're sitting one-on-one with somebody in the corner of the party, and you guys are just locked in on each other in deep conversation. That's exactly the experience that I was having with a bunch of different people. And so I would be locked in these one-on-one conversations, and this was my practice ground for, sharing about myself, and at pretty low stakes, right? Even though I was sharing about myself to somebody new, it felt so low stakes to where it's okay, I can practice. And, because I had just met this person, they didn't know what I was and wasn't willing to share. And so I found it so freeing to be in those dynamics, because I could just go into the conversation and be oh yeah, this is who I am, and this is what I'm up to, and this is what I think. And I found that so freeing. And it also allowed me to practice just not really giving a fuck about the amount of detail that I shared. And so I think going into these conversations, I felt such a sense of freedom around the fact that I was in my 30s. Like, I think I've always said and felt in my body that, like, I was born to be in my 30s. Like, I did not resonate with my 20s at all. I really didn't. And so in my 30s, I'm just loving the freedom and the ease that's coming with it. So that's really just translated into conversations that I've been having with new people that I meet. And I think through those conversations, I've learned how to make fast friends. And that's the exact type of experience that I've had this year, where I'll give a few different examples. And, all of these people come through existing connections. And that's the other thing, where it's like, if we're trying to think about making new friends, it's not like we have to go to people who are like so far out of our network that, they're totally new. Like, there's gems all around us. Like, I can't tell you how many times in this past year I've like found somebody and met them and been like, who are you and why are you here? You're like a diamond in the most unlikely place. The example comes to mind of like one of my work friends introduced me to another coworker and was like, I think you guys need to meet. And this person, it was somebody that I already trusted. And so I'm like, okay, if this person is saying that I need to meet this other person who they're also close to, I'm like, okay, there has to be something here. Like, I'm curious. Like, let me get to know this person. And so there was one experience this year where it's like we were all at a giant work dinner. We walk in and there's an open seat next to the gal that my friend is like, you guys need to meet. You guys need to get to know each other because I think you guys would get along well. And so I sat down next to her at dinner and it's like, oh my God, we just got to talking. And it was exactly one of those types of one-on-one conversations where like you forget about everything that's happening around you and you're just so deep in conversation. And then you like come up for air and you're like, oh my God, like that was so much fun. Let's do it again. And we were also just saying to people like, oh my God, we just met. And the coolest part about that conversation was like, it was truly me taking a step forward to like share parts of myself that I wouldn't normally share, particularly in a work setting with somebody I just met. But there was the overarching safety of it all of like, okay, well, I know that whatever I would tell her would stay within her, like the three of us. So my friend who introduced us and then also her. So no matter what, like it's just staying within the three of us. And so it felt like this sense of safety. And, I think that like when you're really, not only when you're trying to make new friends, but when you're trying to show up differently within friendship and when you're trying to show deeper parts of yourself, I think, at least for me, I found it so helpful to like have that sense of safety around like, okay, I know what I share with you will stay within this smaller group and it's safe to kind of work out, parts of myself out loud and like say parts of myself out loud if, there's that element of safety that allowed me to feel comfortable to share about myself. And, just going on this theme of work, another really interesting thing happened. And it's just like, oh my gosh, just an example of like how incredible connections can come from such unlikely places. I get a lot of emails, and I remember last year getting this one particular email from somebody who's just like loosely in my orbit at the time. And, I remember getting an email from them being like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Would you want to get lunch? And, I get hundreds of emails like this. And normally I don't take them up on the offer. But with this person, there was just this like gut reaction of like, say yes. There's something here for you. And, I didn't know anything about this person. I mean, she works at Reddit. And so I was like, well, this person has to be interesting if they work at Reddit. Like there's probably some really good stories that are going to come from this lunch. And so I just said yes. And I remember getting to the day that she was in town and just thinking to myself like, oh my God, I have so much work to do. I don't know if I can make this lunch. And again, like I was just getting this like gut push to just go on this lunch. And I had to drive like 30 minutes out of my way to go to the lunch. But anyways, I was like, I have to go. Like there's something here for me. And so I get to the place and we're in this spot. Like we go to this restaurant spot that like, super healthy food and like, it was just like such a fun, light atmosphere, such a great lunch spot. And so I walk in and she has like the biggest smile on her face, like grinning ear to ear, and just is like, has such a warm energy and is just like ready to have fun. Like you can tell she's not there to talk about business, which those are like my most favorite outings, where it's like you aren't talking about business, you're just getting to know each other. And I think the best sales reps like that are the ones who know that like if you can become really good friends with the person you're trying to do business with, sales will come. And I think that's just a human nature sort of thing, because people want to work with people they enjoy being around. People want to work with people that they really like. Anyways, like we were sitting there at this lunch, and same thing with how you would meet anyone. It's like you're trying to identify things you have in common, common shared experiences. And we quickly learned that we had both recently turned 30 at the time. We both had the shared perspective that like we feel like we were born to be in our 30s. And it was really cool to talk to somebody else like that who's like still really like into their career, but also like they have things into perspective where it's like their career is not their entire identity. They still take time for themselves to exist as a human being and to flourish in their life as a human being separate from work. I think as you think about wanting to make new friends, one of the things that I've realized is that if there's something in your life that if there's like something, an experience, a thing, a group, or whatever that you have this like pull to go do, it can be totally independent of anything anyone else wants to do. But like if you have that pull to go do it at any point in your life, go do it. Because like it's only going to make for, well, one, it's going to be a great experience. Two, you're going to have something unique that you've done that you could connect with somebody on. Like you never know. Like for example, in this case, this gal and I, yes, we were connecting on being 30, but we are also connecting on solo travel and how incredible that's been. Like she was talking about she's more of an avid solo traveler than I am. Like I've only been on one solo trip, but the fact that I went on that solo trip gave me a new lens, a new experience in which to connect with somebody else on, right? So had I not gone on that solo trip, I wouldn't be able to connect with this person in this experience about solo travel. Like I wouldn't know about it, and we couldn't talk about it on as deep of a level. And that is something that just really became clear, and we were able to talk about it on such a deep level. And like this type of thing just feels like a no duh sort of thing. Like, oh, if you want to be able to talk about certain experiences with people, like go and do the thing, like go do cool things if you want to talk to cool people, right? Like, because if you go and do cool things, then chances are you're just going to come into contact with other cool people who have probably done that same cool thing that you can connect on. And they've probably also done a bunch of other cool things that you can also learn from and be expanded by, and just expand your mind as to what else is out there. Like, for example, in this conversation with this gal that I was having lunch with, this gal that works at Reddit, you know, we were talking about solo travel. And yes, I've only been on one solo trip, but she was giving me so much inspiration for the next solo trip and the different ways to think about it. And, you know, she was even sharing her perspective of like, even though she's in a committed relationship, she's like, I still go on solo travels. Like she's like, this is so important to me. And it's important as a way for me to like reground myself and really stay in tune with who I am. And I thought that was such an incredible thing, because I think, you know, we can all, for whatever reason, I think perhaps societally or maybe older generations, have kind of set this tone for like, oh, well, once you're in a partnership, like you don't go on any solo travel. It's like a weird thing to do. And I just loved her perspective of like, well, no, I also go on solo travels and I'm in a committed relationship, which I thought was so beautiful and like very expansive. So, you know, continuing on this theme of, if you go and do cool things, or if you go and do something that's like really off the beaten path, you're going to be able to connect with someone deeper on that topic. And this next example, prime example of, you know, I was connecting with somebody on a topic that's very close to me, which is burnout. But then also there was this layer going back to the point of like aligned friendships, and like the coolest people are probably already in your network, and the people who are like really aligned with the current chapter of your life right now probably already in your network or in your orbit somewhere. And it's just like having everything aligned to where you're coming into connection with them. So like this next example was a prime example of that, where it's like I was going to a friend's wedding. It was in California, and it was in Monterey, California. There was a crew of us going, and it was a college friend. And so the crew that was traveling was all, you know, we all went to the same college. And most people I knew, but some people I didn't. And there was a couple there who I was like, I don't know you. I know of you. I definitely know who you are, but I've never, like, we aren't friends and we haven't ever talked. And so they've been in my orbit for over a decade. And I had never actually gotten a chance to speak with them. And so going into this trip, I was super excited because I'm like, I know so much about you. Like I remember in college, like hearing about you guys, and I'm so excited to get to know you. And of this couple, the gal, you know, we ended up sitting next to each other at dinner one night, or sitting across from each other. And she just started talking about how she just went back to work to, like, after taking a sabbatical, like a 3-month sabbatical, to kind of recover from burnout. And she like took the time to go travel and like really kind of rest and de-stress. And yeah, so she was like literally a day or two into being back to work after that entire experience. And she was even talking about, like, while on her sabbatical, like she started dreaming again. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't think people realize like how impactful it is. If you haven't experienced this, when you're so burnt out, or when you're so stressed, or when you're in a constant state of stress and your body is so hyperactive to where you aren't even like dreaming. When I heard her say she started dreaming again, I was like, oh, like you really reached a new level of just recovery and nourishing your body and just getting yourself into a better spot. The energy that I was sensing from her was like, oh, she is in her authenticity. Like she's coming to this dinner being so authentic. And, you know, I think when we can get so overrun and overwhelmed by our career, I think we can also sort of lose our authenticity in spaces where it is just like connecting personally. Like this was purely our personal life and no one's connected to anyone's career at all in this setting. But I think it's super interesting that, you know, when you take away the pressure of career on who you are, that's when your authenticity can really shine. And she was doing that. I mean, I was like sitting across from her being like, just like deep in my intuition. Like I knew that she was like way more authentic than she was before. I had never interacted with her before. I mean, I just like loosely knew who she was from afar, but like even interacting with her then, I was like, oh, I can just tell that you've reached a new level of like being comfortable within yourself. And I think that one of the most beautiful parts of that dinner is like I was able to connect with her on burnout in general and like what that means and what that does to the body and what that does to the mind and how you can recover from it. And again, like this is an example of like when I like quit my job previously to recover from burnout, and when I made the choice to truly prioritize my health and my body and come out and say, look, I'm burnt out. That's something that not a lot of people do. And so that is one of those cases where it's like I went and did the thing that not many people are going to do. And so now whenever I find somebody who really understands burnout, who has experienced it, who has taken action to recover, like I'm just drawn to those people. And I've also been finding that the more I have followed taking care of myself and like really tending to the different chapters or the different parts of me who need help and need to recover from burnout, for example, like the more I encounter people who have also experienced burnout. And I think that can be true for any experience. Like if you go and do the cool thing, or the thing that's like unexpected or the thing that not many people do, I think you're naturally just going to come into contact with a bunch more people who have done that thing. And so if you're really sitting there being like, gosh, like how do I make new friends? If there's something that you have in your mind that you're like, ooh, I would really love to do that. Or, oh, I really need to do that. Or, oh, I've been avoiding this thing. I really need to go do that. Follow that, because I think that's not only will it bring you closer to yourself, it's also going to put you in connection with people who can become deeply close friends. And you guys will just be able to connect on a whole other level that you can't really connect on with other people. And so that was really like, that was such a wonderful experience of just being able to sit across from somebody and be like, I understand you. I really understand you. You know, it's interesting because even later on in that trip, we were both sort of saying a similar thing of like, oh my God, I can't believe that we're just now meeting. You know, we've been in each other's orbit like for years, like over a decade. How are we just now speaking? And to me, it points to just the timing of things, right? Because like if I were to have encountered her, a decade ago when we were first in college, like I don't think we would have connected because I mean, it makes sense, right? Like we were both different people and on different paths, and like we both hadn't gone through the shit yet to have a common experience, right? Like we both hadn't gone through our individual shit to have the common shared experience that we could later, bond over. And I think that makes a ton of sense. Like timing is so important. And I think it's also such a beautiful thing because if people are meant to be in your life, like they'll come back around. And, no matter how much time apart you've spent or how much time has been between when you were last connected or in each other's immediate environment, so to speak. So in all of those experiences, it was many cases of like making fast friends. And they all served as reminders to me of like, okay, the deeper I've met myself, the deeper I can meet somebody else by, putting myself in situations where I'm like having deep conversations with new people or people I haven't like connected deeply to before. It was giving me a chance to practice sharing about myself because to be honest, like sharing so deeply about myself with people I have been in very long-term friendships with is like a little bit more scary. So I'm like working my way up to the point of just like really sharing about myself. And so those were all like really good practice experiences. Now these people are like still loosely in my orbit, but they aren't in my day-to-day. I will say that I think all of these situations were happening in tandem with me creating like deeper friendships with other people. So it's like I was learning from these smaller experiences to help me and fuel me and prepare me for these deeper, longer term friendships. And this is where it starts to feel kind of like dating because it's like, okay, all of these three scenarios where I was like making fast friends were informing how I approach these like deeper friendships that I was also building at the same time. Now with these more like long-term, long-standing, ongoing friendships that I was building at the same time, I think really the same principles applied, but I was just doing it in a more dedicated manner. And I think about that analogy of like the more you water a plant or the more love and care and water and consistency you give to a plant, the more it's going to grow. And the more sunlight you give to it, the more it's going to grow. And so I think it's the same exact thing in friendships. And it always has been like in my 20s and still in my 30s. Like it's that same sort of thing. I think for me, really the biggest difference is the depth in which I'm willing to go in sharing about myself and having done the work on myself to really be okay with where I'm at and feeling really good about the things that I'm working on, the place that I'm in my life. And I think from that place, I've really been able to I've built confidence within myself so that I can connect with people and like put myself out there to connect with people. But when I think about like, watering that plant, it just goes back to what I would consider as the basics, where it's like you're doing the things that build trust. So if somebody is telling you things that feel really sensitive or feel really confidential, one, you're keeping those things confidential. But two, you're also just creating a really safe space for them to share. So when they're sharing, you're listening, you're hearing what they have to say, and you aren't trying to fix anything. You're just listening and witnessing them and allowing them to work out whatever they want to work out. And if they ask you for your perspective, if they ask you how you would handle it, you give them that. But you don't just like give unsolicited advice, right? Or like if you need to intervene, you do it in a loving way. And, you know, I think that's a big part of like building trust is keeping confidentiality, proving over and over again on a daily basis that you have their back and that you want the best for them. And that comes in so many micro moments, right? Like they say, it could take years to build trust. It could take a second to break it. And so it's really the micro moments where you're just proving over and over and over again. You're building up evidence that you're a great person. And I think also a great person and a great friend. And I think for me in particular, when I'm really focused on building a friendship and as a friend, I really try and check in. So it's checking in, it's seeing how the person is doing, it's listening to what's happening in their life, it's following up when they have big events. It's like, okay, after the event, tell me all about it. Tell me everything. Or even just a day-to-day thing that you know is weighing on them. Talk to them before, follow up with them after. Like, how did it go? Tell me all about it. And I think it's that sort of thing of just consistently doing that where you're going to build a friendship. And I think over time, you can take steps forward to like share things about yourself that you wouldn't normally share with people. And that's what I've been doing. And you know, really like over this whole past year, and this really just goes back to Secret Garden just as an idea in general and as a concept. But like, I am somebody who has always really tried to control the amount or the level of things that different people know about me. And to a certain extent, I think I will always be that way. Because I do have a lot of Scorpio in my chart, in my natal chart in astrology. I'm a Scorpio stellium. And so I think that's also just like part of being a Scorpio. I really identify with Scorpio tendencies. And so there is this like element of mystery, but I think with these deep friendships, I've just been able to put myself out there so much. And, you know, I just want to continue doing that. I think that's one of the things that I've just been so excited about in my 30s is like, I just want to build deep connections with people and aligned connections, right? Like people who I know are safe, who I really trust, who I really value their perspective. And yeah, that's just what I've been most focused on this year. But I hope this has been helpful and maybe even inspiring you to think about like, okay, if you're somebody sitting there being like, God, like my number one goal right now is to make new friends, really think about like, okay, what's the thing that your heart is telling you to go do? Or what are you avoiding that you secretly really want to go do? I would say go and do that thing, because either you're gonna meet people there that are like-minded people that you're really going to connect with, or it's going to give you an experience of doing that thing that you really wanted to do. And then you're going to be able to meet somebody later on and connect with them on that thing that you really wanted to do and that you did. So that's one thing. Also, keep in mind that like these friends that you want to have are probably already in your orbit somehow. Whether they're connected through that really cool thing you want to do, maybe they're at the gym. Like I've been laughing to myself because I've always been somebody who like, you know, living in the Indianapolis area, yes, it's a city, but like I've always been drawn to the big cities like Chicago, New York, LA. Like I've always felt this pull to those big cities. And I think it has a lot to do with like me registering those big cities as like exciting places. And so I've always felt called to those types of cities. And so at times when I'm in Indianapolis, I can feel like I'm not connected to the excitement or excitement in general with because of the city I'm in. Or I feel like I'm not as easily able to connect with like-minded people because most people here are like settling down, married, have kids, have dogs, like all the things. Whereas like I would say like all my friends who live here are in that stage of life versus like my friends who live in big cities, they're like still single or they're in a partnership, but like they're just like living their lives. And so, oftentimes I've been trying to figure out like, well, how can I meet like-minded people in this city that I live in? And I think I've found the place. And I think it's at Solid Core because it's so funny to me because I'm somebody who like has tried most of the workout places in the area I live in. I mean, when it comes to like yoga and Pilates, I know what I'm working with. I know what's around. And it's so interesting because, I go to a yoga studio and then I go to Solid Core and I don't feel like I'm surrounded by supremely like-minded people at yoga, but with Solid Core I walk in and I'm like, oh, these are the girls that get it. Like these are the girls that like scroll on TikTok. Because like you walk into a Solid Core class and everyone's wearing like the latest set, the latest trend, wearing an Air One bag and in a Solid Core in Indianapolis. Like it's like, okay, these are the girlies that get it. And these are the girlies that are like connected to these bigger city vibes. And so I use that as an example of like, think about the places, like if you're trying to meet people who are like really on the cutting edge of things, like where would they work out? Where would they lurk? Where would they be? And it's so interesting because like I really feel like the Solid Core gym is like the place to find these types of people because if you're somebody who's ambitious and is looking to grow and defy the limits of like your own mind and like really push yourself into your full potential, like you're definitely going to meet some like-minded people at Solid Core because that is the ethos of the brand. That is the ethos of the whole routine and the whole method. So think about whatever that might be for you. Also, like going back to this whole point of like, there's incredible people in unlikely places. And so even in the places that you currently exist in, like at work, for example, like who's somebody that seems really cool that you haven't necessarily connected with yet? And like, can you ask for an introduction? Or how can you like work on a project with them or work on a certain task with them where it's like you could start to become friends? Because like you just never know where personal friendships can start to develop in. And I think when you think about, or at least when I think about really building a friendship, I think it's something that needs like again, it's like going back to the plant analogy. You have to continuously water it. And so I think in a work setting can be a really cool place to start to build friendships and deep friendships because you're constantly having to spend time together every single day of the work week. And that's so much time. That's 40 hours a week when you guys are like playing in the same environment. And so that's a lot of time to pour into building friendships. Yes, you're getting your work done, but also you're building friendships. And so that's how you can start to pull friendship into your work life and start to almost like create a flow within work and personal life. I really hope that this gives you the inspiration and the courage to start making new friends. And yeah, just know that it's a natural part of life of just wanting to meet new friends and meeting friends who really align with the chapter of your life that you're in right now. And just know that you can do it. You can absolutely do it. And these people are out there and they're so close to you. You just really have to open your eyes and find them.